chapter 17 of My Teacher Fried My Brains by Bruce Coville, which is the second book in the 4-part series of My Teacher is an Alien by Bruce Coville. I think I already said that. Anyways, this is chapter 17 called Forced into the Field. Which is kind of supposed to be like force field, you know? Yeah. Anyways, chapter 17, make sure to put your book requests in the comments. Let's get started. Something started to beep upstairs. Coville kept her eyes and left. That didn't make any sense, did it? Coville kept her right and left eyes fixed on me while she rolled the center one toward the sound. I need to go tend to something, she said with a slight sigh. I'll be back soon. We can talk some more then. You called this talking? I thought bitterly. Coville made a clicking noise with their tongue. Come, Duncan. Whether or not you are actually opening your mouth, we are exchanging ideas, which is what talking is all about. I'm sorry my language implant does not have a word adequate to describe the fact that your half of the conversation comes in thoughts rather than words. I rather suspect, however, that the problem has more to do with the lack in your language than it does in the device itself. The beeping upstairs continued. She turned and left the room. Goodness. While she was gone, I tried to move. I strained as if I were trying to lift an alien. I mean, an elephant. And with about as much effect. I wasn't cold, but I was frozen stiff as a popsicle. As I stood there paralyzed in the middle of the living room of an alien invader who happened to be masquerading as a slightly dippy home economics teacher, I decided that life is just so fascinating I could barely stand it. The poo came over and rolled around my feet for a while. Then it started to climb up my leg. That's when I knew that whatever Coville had done to paralyze me was foolproof. I couldn't even shudder. The poo kept climbing until it reached my shoulder, where it settled down like a small kitten. Even though I kind of liked the poo, I couldn't convince myself that it wasn't about to make itself real thin so it could ooze into my ear canal and suck out my fried brain. Suddenly, it reached up with a blob of itself, a pseudopod, my brain informed me, even though I hadn't asked, and patted my cheek. Then it sent me a message. Don't worry. If I could have blinked, shouted, jumped, anything to show my surprise, I would have. Poot had talked to me. Well, that's not quite the way I would put it. It had sent a message into my head, but not in words. It was definitely a feeling. It patted my cheek again. Nice, Duncan. Poot, get down from there. It was Coville. She had come back into the room while I was concentrating on the slug. Poot, cried the slug in alarm as it slid down my arm. It made it to the floor faster than I would have thought possible. Bad Poot, said Coville when the creature wrapped itself around her foot. Bad. The slug made several whimpering little poots. I couldn't say for certain, but I think they meant, please don't put me back in this Tupperware. Coville ignored her pet. She looked troubled. What's wrong? I thought. She looked at me in surprise. Actually, I was a little surprised myself. Why should I care that something was bothering her? Well, I suppose the fact that if she was in a bad mood, I was in real trouble, would be one reason to care. But this wasn't that kind of thought. It just came floating to the top of my mind, as if I really did care. Coville flapped her nose at me, which I had begun to recognize as something that she sometimes did in place of smiling. Thank you for asking, she said. Actually, it has to do with why you're here. That was an incoming message. Unfortunately, it is so old it is of no value to me. I really must get you installed in my communication system. Cursed Broxholm for leaving me in this situation anyway. That brought up something I had been wondering about. How come you don't look like Broxholm? Coville smiled. The universe is a very big place, Duncan. Broxholm and I come from different planets, different star systems, actually. We are part of an intercultural group performing a major study on your planet. Really, you humans are the most fascinating species. You have the greatest brain capacity of any animal in the galaxy, yet you behave like total idiots. Hey, I thought I heard. Creelum just chuckled her tongue. Clucked her tongue. Like that. Oh, really, Duncan? You're bright enough now to know that's true. There isn't another intelligent species in the galaxy that treats its whole planet like a sewer. No one else lets their children starve. Virtually every other intelligent species gave up war centuries earlier than in their developmental cycle. Her nose swatted a fly that had landed on the side of her face, then sucked the flattened insect into her mouth. She chewed thoughtfully for a second, then said, I'm sure you can see what the problem is, Duncan. Now that you're on the verge of space travel, you're making every other intelligent species quite nervous. No one knows what you people might do once you get out there. That's why we're studying you, dear. We have to figure out what to do about you. I didn't like the sound of that, but Creeblin wasn't willing to talk about it any longer. She tapped me on the forehead with her wooden spoon, then floated me up 2 flights of stairs to her attic. She parked me in the middle of the room, then went to a panel on the wall and fiddled with some dials. Suddenly, a blue beam stretched from the floor to the ceiling. I knew what that was. Susan had described it to me. It was some kind of force field Brockholm had used to hold Miss Schwartz a prisoner. This is where you'll be staying for now, Duncan, said the alien. No! Oh, don't be silly. It won't hurt you. Of course, it will be a little dull, since nothing happens in here. All your bodily processes will be on hold. Eating, drinking, breathing, digesting. You won't have to worry about any of them. Your body will stop aging, too, though getting older is hardly an issue for you right now. Of course, you can think of all you want. It may give you a chance to put together some of the learning you've been doing. After all, facts don't do much good in isolation, do they? She pulled me over to the force field with her wooden spoon. My body was rigid, but my brain was fighting like crazy. Not that it did me any good. Suddenly I felt a tingle in the top of my head. I was entering the force field. It pulled me in like a little vacuum cleaner sucking It pulled me in like a vacuum cleaner sucking up a speck of dust. As I felt myself whooshed into the shimmering shaft of blue light, tiny forces began to adjust my body, pushing me here, pulling there, until I was perfectly centered. I couldn't move my head to look down, of course, but from looking straight ahead, I got the feeling I was floating about 1.5 feet in the air. I was tingling all over. Comfortable? Asked Creeblin, putting her hand against the force field. Get me out of here, I thought desperately. She looked surprised at the intensity of my reaction. At least the eye in the middle of her forehead blinked. I'm sorry, Duncan, but I can't do that. The weird thing was, I really felt like she meant that. She meant it. She turned and went down the stairs, leaving me alone with my thoughts. That wasn't altogether bad. I had been so frightened for the past few hours that I hadn't been thinking clearly. Actually, with the radio and TV reception problems, it had been more like a couple of days since I had been able to think clearly. And what was the use of a magnificent brain like mine if I don't use it to think? Unfortunately, all I could think about was what Creeblin had said. The thing about the other intelligent species in the galaxy trying to figure out what to do about us. I was frightened and ashamed. I had read a lot of history in the past few weeks, along with everything else, and it wasn't a pretty picture. The idea that someone from outside had been watching as us bumble along, blowing each other up, starving ourselves when there was enough food for everyone, poisoning our own air, well, it was embarrassing. It certainly is, said a voice in my head. I felt a shiver of fear. Was I losing my mind? What was going on here? Who is that? Come on, Duncan. Don't you know who I am? That's all. That's the end of chapter 17. Remember to put your book suggestions in the comments. If there's a book that you you are not able to get a hold of, or there's just not a way that you can have it, like you don't have enough money to buy it, or like your library isn't open or something, then just put it in the comments, because I can read it, and then it's free. So, do all that, like, subscribe, share with your friends, whatever, bye.